Welcome to Career Tools. This week, staying current professionally, RSS feeds. Here we go. Folks, before we start, I just want to mention we're about to launch all the 2014 conference dates. So if you're thinking about coming to an EMC or ECC, you'll be getting emails about that. And you can go to the website and find out where and when we're going to be. We have over 100 conferences scheduled next year trying to keep up with demand. Come and join us. We'd love to meet you. Okay, Wendy, so this week we're going to talk about RSS feeds, which is embarrassing because you and I have been talking about doing a curated RSS feed for years, and now that I've said that, everyone's going to be like, oh my gosh, I got to have that. But lacking that, nothing wrong with lots of new ideas. We have plenty of them. Lacking that, RSS feeds have essentially replaced what happened when I was a kid, which was newspapers. That was the way the world's news was delivered to people. And now RSS feeds make it a ton easier and in some ways harder. There's a lot of different ways of keeping up with industry news and world news because organizations, corporations are part of the world. So we need to be able to manage it. So what's our guidance?
Okay, so we're gonna split it into two. So the first part is the technical part of choosing a feed reader and choosing the feeds. And the second part is how to manage the information flow that you're then getting. So we've got make a cursory sweep each day and choose one day a week for a deeper read.
Okay. So you mentioned about feed reader and feeds. We probably need to spend a minute talking about what the heck those things are, right?
Okay. So
talk slowly.
I don't think it helps. So RSS stands for really simple syndication. And no, I don't know what that means any more than I know what hypertext transfer protocol means, which is HTTP, but you don't need to know.
It's a protocol for transferring hypertext. I don't know.
I guess.
And RSS is a syndication technique, which is really pretty simple, but okay, whatever. I think that's what it means.
Yeah, so when you see, as we go through this, like RSS is the thing you need to look out for on websites so that you know that there's something there that you can use.
Right, and to be clear, an RSS logo, which is a sort of an orange square with a couple of semicircles in it that looks almost like sound waves, right? Mm-hmm. That's right, okay. And you'll see those on the Manager Tools website if you want. I think there's a link that says our RSS feeds. And what that says on a website is, we support the use of RSS readers, a feed reader. And what that says is on our website, we will, if you subscribe to us, if you have a client, an RSS, a feed reader client, we aggregate information so that your client can talk to our website and we'll give you new information. That's what's on the website of, let's say, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the International Herald Tribune or the Daily Mail or what have you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, and that's the server side of it, which is we have information which you might be interested in or maybe not. And then there's the client side, which is what me and you and all the people we're talking to would have, which is, hey, I need something to go out and look at these things. Once I tell it, I want the New York Times feed, and I suspect there are many, it will go and essentially talk to the New York Times server portion. It's just like email in the sense somebody's going to write me immediately and say, Mark, it's not just like email.
It's nothing like
email.
And
there's
but it is.
It is. No, technically speaking, it is.
If you don't know what's happening, that's what it is. Your email is out there and then it comes to you.
Yeah. And the way email, and you've probably heard this said before, even if you're not a techie, you on your computer and on your phone and on your iPad have something called a client, which is a thing that goes and grabs email from the server. That's why you hear client server mentioned a lot together. And it's the same thing is true with RSS. RSS says we're going to organize our data in such a way that if you use a reader and ping us, we're going to tell you whether or not there's something new. And if there is, we'll give it to you. It's a bit like mail, although it has a number of different forms and so on. And I know, again, folks, please don't write me and say RSS is nothing like mail. Technically speaking, they're very similar. There's a client, which we have, a reader, which we'll talk about, and then there's a server, which has the information. And this is just a way for you all to get more information, to make it easier for you to keep up with the fact the world seems to be changing faster and faster, and pretty soon it'll be spinning out of control.
Yeah. So if you can't imagine why you would want this, and I know lots of people have said that to me, like, why would I want that?
Oh, I can't. How could you really? People say that?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of people have said that to me.
In other words, you tell them, you can get all this information delivered to you, and they say, no, I don't want it.
Yeah, they're just confused about why they want that to happen.
Okay, so this is not Ludditism, modern version of informational Ludditism.
No, I think they just can't understand the benefit.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll give you an example, see if that helps everybody understand what the benefits are if you haven't already got it. So think of a store you like, but you don't go to very often. The store's like in a mall that's like 80 miles away. So there's Pottery Barn and Williams-Sonoma and Smythson and Brooks Brothers, this very upmarket mall. And every time you want to know if Pottery Barn have got something new, you have to drive all the way there and look around the showroom, and maybe there's something new and maybe there isn't, and then you drive all the way back. The way RSS works is it gets Pottery Barn and Williams-Sonoma and Smythson and Brooks Brothers to, when they have something new, they tell you instead of the other way. In fact, the feed reader goes out and finds out whether or not they've got something new. But effectively, the information comes to you instead of you having to go find it.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, but just to be, I want to refine that a little bit. The information doesn't come to you. You need to have a client. You need to say, and it can be as simple as logging into the Feedly website or some other reader's website and say, go get stuff. And the reader is constantly asking them, is there something new? And the server, Pottery Barn, says, yes, there is something new, and you can have it. And then your reader brings it back to you after a fashion. And then when you open up that feed in your reader, it says, yes, here's all the new stuff that Pottery Barn has said it has since the last time you checked.
Exactly. So the feed reader acts like a box at a post office. It collates all the messages and it holds them there until you've had time to read them or do whatever you want with them. So, and some of those are blog posts, but they're not all blog posts. They can be podcasts. It's the iTunes. If you're subscribed to Manager Tools in iTunes, it's the same methodology that uses it. Any updates from websites can use RSS.
Yeah. And again, folks, we're a little high level right now because we're trying to get down to, okay, how can you keep current on professional and business news and so on? But you've got to understand this in order to say, okay, I want to do it. Just to be clear, if you don't want to add any software to your computer, some people are uncomfortable with that. You don't have to. I subscribe to Feedly, or I'm a user of Feedly. And the way I get it is I just open a web page, and the web page has all of my feeds on it. Some people, you can get apps for those of you who have iOS or some other smartphone ecosystem, and there are actual applications you can get as well. But many people use them in their browser. And in my case, all I have is a bookmark that's in my bookmark bar, and I only have about 10 of them up there. And one of them is, it opens to Feedly, even though what I have in it is the Manager Tools forums and requests for me in various places that I need to respond to.
You mentioned Feedly, which is the one that you and I, the feed reader that you and I are using at the moment. But we don't want to have everybody think, oh, Feedly is the only one, or that it's the one you should be using.
We're not making a recommendation, folks, because that would then make this cast timely rather than timeless. We generally think that RSS is not going away for the next 50 years or so. And we think that's a pretty good timeline to make our recommendations for. We've only made one cast, folks. We've only done one cast, unless you count our annual resume updates and Career Tools feed. We've only done one cast that we consider to be timely rather than timeless. And I'll prove it to you. The cast was called the MySpace cast, because when we did it, MySpace was big and Facebook was nothing. I suspect there are people right now listening who went to the website and started going through cast and said, why would I want to
what the hell is MySpace?
Yeah, why would I use that? In fact, we should probably change the name to the Facebook cast, right? And say, here's what to do in your social media. So keep that in mind. Our goal is timeless and not timely. And we get ribbed about that every once in a while. We're thought as arrogant for suggesting that something could be timely or timeless rather than timely. And we, after 700 casts and only having missed once, we think it's a pretty good standard to set. But folks, part of the reason we can't make a recommendation, or we don't want to make a recommendation, we'll tell you what Wendy and I use. I don't know. Mike doesn't use Feedly, does he, Wendy?
No, he
uses something else.
Yeah, he uses something else. I think he uses the Mac one.
Yeah. The issue, folks, is that nobody can make any money in RSS readers, and so they come and go. As an example, Google, which I don't think really needs to make any money, and in fact, hosts a lot of mail and doesn't make any money, at least from the mail part. They certainly make money from advertising. Just shuttered Google Reader. And a bunch of people went to Feedly and others because of that.
Dig just created one as well. So
okay.
Yeah, so I have, I've been using RSS since it existed, I think. So I got two pieces of advice when you're choosing, or two pieces of guidance when you're choosing one. Firstly, I do have a reader instead of how you can have a lot of this stuff sent to your email. But when we talk about how to manage all this stuff later on, we're going to talk about deleting messages very quickly. We're just going to have a cursory glance and then we're going to delete it. And on a feed, if you miss one RSS post, you're not going to miss anything. If it's something big, everybody's going to be talking about it in your niche. And so you'll have a bunch of different feeds about the same thing. So you're not going to miss one. Whereas if you delete an email, quite often those are singular and you might miss something important. So we don't want to mix up the different kinds of messages. And the other thing I would recommend is if you've got multiple devices, use a reader that syncs across the multiple devices. So I use Feedly on my desktop, on my phone, on my iPad, and on my laptop, so that wherever I am, if I've got a spare few minutes, I can go through my Feedly and see what's there on my feed reader and see what's there. And the fact that they sync, and then the next time I get to the other device and the ones I've read are read and the ones I saved are saved, it saves me time. So I'm up for that.
I like the multiple devices thing. I end up processing the majority of them on my desktop or my laptop because in my case, it often requires a response. My feeds tend to be things where people have asked questions in the forums, for instance, or it refers me to a website and I want to look at it on a larger screen rather than on my phone. And I generally don't write longer responses on my iPad, although I do have a wireless keyboard for it. I know many people who do it on their iPad simply because they want to think of it as being almost arm's length. In other words, they don't want to get too involved. They want to think of their RSS read as a scan, much like we recommend here by saying a cursory sweep every day rather than it's not like email where you think this is potentially an obligation for me and I need to read it very carefully. It's essentially scanning at a high level and getting a lay of the universe rather than digging down in incredible detail. And so being on an iPad or on the phone causes one to perhaps click on a link and open it and read it. And then if you forget about it, it's fine. Often RSS feeds, far more often than email, do not create a responsibility. Peter Drucker taught us the definition of communication is that it creates demand. That's one of the reasons why USA Today and many other newspapers love things called, what are they called? Infolets, or the little pictures that are that don't require demand. Like, for instance, a pie chart that says, here's how many people say X and here's how many people say Y to something. Infographics. Yeah. Very, very much non-demanding as information. It's almost a bite-sized piece of information. And people like the fact that RSS gives you the ability to scan through hundreds of things in perhaps 5 minutes just to get a sense of what's happening and then decide, okay, I'm going to read more about X or Y or Z. And being able to do it on multiple devices, I don't particularly use it that way, but a lot of people do and highly recommend doing it that way.
Okay, so once you've got a feed reader you found one that you like and kind of works for you, then you need to go find the feed. So those are the websites where it says we have an RSS feed, or they have got the orange box logo that we talked about earlier. Most newspapers have multiple feeds. I read the Wall Street Journal careers feed, but I don't read any of the others. I just want that one in my feed reader. So they'll have 20 or 30 that you can choose from. But RSS is usually, it's easier to use for more specialized things. So you want to kind of look for things in your niche rather than more general news. I've found that's how it works for me.
Okay, so you're saying, maybe we're in disagreement a little bit on that. You're not suggesting you use RSS feed for world news from the Journal or the Times or the Herald or...
No, I would probably look at the front page of the BBC or the front page of the Wall Street Journal for that, and then have my RSS as specialized. But that's not the only way to do it. You know, this.
Yeah. See, to me, I think that's completely reasonable for you. For me, having it all in one place is a little bit easier. Now, I still read all of the journal every day, everything except the finance section, which I can't understand. But I read all of it. And so I have an app on my iPad, and every night, or either at the gym or first thing when I wake up, I read the entire journal. That said, there are places in the journal, an example would be the careers feed, that never makes the paper, right? That's one of the things that's happened with newspapers today is there's both analog and digital. And what you get in the digital version, in an iPad version, for instance, or the online version, is not, the paper itself does not include all the information. And I've done a poor job in the last few years with journal feeds, in part because I got frustrated that the journal would call and ask me for quotes and so on. They often mangled the quotes. And by the way, this is not just true of the journal, folks. It's true of many journalistic endeavors. The person who was asking didn't really know what they were talking about and was attempting to translate. I've always said that journalists talking to experts and then translating for the rest of the world is a bit like a French guy translating from somebody in Mongolia to somebody in South Africa. There's an inherent problem there. And when I got quoted, they typically mangled it, or they put it in a context that served the purpose of the article, but misrepresented what I did. And then when the United States Supreme Court said, oh, they can put quotes around your words, even if it's not a direct quote, I thought, well, unfortunately, a lot of the journalists aren't smart enough to keep up with what I say. No offense, guys. I know some people think I'm arrogant, but sorry, I know what I'm talking about some stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to subscribe to all this stuff because I'm tired of the journal asking for quotes. And then, oh, by the way, I had somebody say the other day, why, gosh, I wonder if any podcasts are making money. I'm like, geez, the journal knows me. They know me. They ought to ask me, anybody making money? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
We are. Yeah. But I think I could do better and probably ought to add some of that to my feed just so I can keep up. So I have Drucker, I have the forums, I have Seth Godin's blog.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. If you think about marketing, it's not awesome for everybody. And I have to go to the forums all the time to answer questions from people. So
that's one thing that people often say. They sometimes ask me, what do you have on your feeds? As I've said before, like I have like 300. Like it goes up and down between about 250 and 300. And they say, well, what do you have? Well, I have things that are of interest to me in my job. And, Seth Godin is awesome, and I do some marketing as part of my job. But if it's not what you're doing, then you don't need it. Yeah,
but I think that's probably not as helpful as our listeners are used to us being. So let me touch on this and then promise you all that we will come back to you with detailed recommendations, segregated by industry as best we can. And we're not going to address every industry, but we'll address the big ones. Folks, in the United States, you've got to be subscribed to a news feed. If you want to do your local news feed, that's fine. If you're in Tampa and want to do the Tribune, fine. I would recommend the Wall Street Journal. I would recommend the New York Times. Every once in a while, I get a mail from somebody who says, internationally, Mark, you sound a little bit, you're a little too American-centric. And one guy actually was really rude to me, an email. I always think rudeness in email is kind of funny. But about the fact that we're terribly American-centric and nothing that we recommend would work anywhere else. I just got an email saying heavenly thank yous from a child care center owner in Australia with 3 employees saying your stuff is fabulous. And that's definitely not a big company, and it's definitely not corporate, but she loves our stuff. But many people say, oh, you're always giving American examples. Folks, you go anywhere in the world and people will tell you, people who know the greatest newspaper in the world is the New York Times. Now, I happen to love the Times. I prefer the Journal because I want more business news, but the New York Times business news is fabulous. Now, look, if you're in London, the Times is fabulous. And I wouldn't have a problem with a British person saying, I prefer the London Times. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, once you get among the top 50 to 75, maybe even 100 newspapers in the world, they're all fine for giving you world news. Okay? I think you need a world news feed. I think you need a national news feed. I think you need a local news feed. And if you're in a big city, that's not that hard. And I'd be a little bit agnostic about whether or not I chose the Daily Mail or the Times, and I'm sure...
Oh, no, hold on. No, the Daily Mail is not news. You can choose the Independent, the Guardian, or the Times.
Yeah, I was making a joke.
Oh, that's okay.
That's why I was about to say a Brit would probably have a problem with that. What's interesting about this is there's a lot of choices, and they're competing with one another, and they know what they're competing for. So again, a world news feed, because you do need to know what's going on internationally, a national news feed, and you can get them all from the same place or different places if you wish, a local news feed, an industry news feed, and a general business feed as well. If it were me, I'd probably have a couple of different industry feeds, and I'd probably choose some custom ones, which we'll talk about in a different cast. We'll dig more into this in the future in terms of choosing your feeds. I also think you need to consider people. People miss this all the time. You know, I had Drucker for a long time, and of course, Peter Drucker's gone now. Rest in peace, sir. But you ought to know about leaders and analysts. I used to follow a guy who had a fabulous venture capital blog until I finally got sick of it because I love venture capital after a fashion, but it's not that big a deal compared to banks in the world. And there are certain individuals, Seth Godin is an example. But again, we'll give more detailed recommendations. It'll be a long cast. I don't know how we'll deliver it. We may deliver it in parts. And it may be one of those things, Wendy, that we'll have to update regularly, right?
Yeah, I think
like the annual resume cast. And guys, we really don't. We're not interested in being timely. We're not. We're not going to tell you, oh, by the way, here's a new feed, and it's only going to be up for 6 months, and you should definitely read it. It's only going to be up for 6 months. It's probably not all that important. But many people write us and say, I really want to know about what you think about video resumes. Well, the fact that we haven't talked about it should give you some indication of what we think about it. We don't think about it. If we think about it, we try to talk about it. Okay, all right. So I've probably gone too long there. Let's talk now about the second half of this. I've decided what my feeds are going to be. Again, we'll get to that, folks, in the future cast. And Winnie, let's not make it too long, right? Because we're going to have some people start going, okay, which ones are they? But now what do we do with it? Okay, how do we interact with our feeds?
So nearly all of the feed readers, I think all of them, allow you to save posts. So what we're going to do is each day we're going to have a cursory sweep through, and I don't know, I can do 100 and less than 10 minutes, I would think, and take out all of the things that aren't interesting. A lot of blogs only send the title in the first paragraph. Some people, it depends on how the RSS feed has been set up. Sometimes you get the whole thing. So you can do it if you've got it on your devices. I do it in line at the grocery store. You can do it in line at lunch. You can wait, while you're waiting for the kids to come out of school, during ads.
Do you do that on your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it.
Yeah, I do it sometimes when I'm doing housework and I'm waiting for something to soak, or like whatever. You don't really even have to have your full attention on it. It's one of those things you can multitask.
Yeah, I can't believe you just said that.
But if you miss one, it's not a big deal, because if it's something big and you've got 4 feeds from people in your industry,
yep,
all 4 of them are going to be talking about it, and they'll all have a different point of view on it. So reading all 4 is useful, but if you miss one, you're not going to miss the fact that Congress has passed legislation that affects your industry in a big way. So
right,
you can delete them. And then every time you see something that looks like it's worth a deeper read, you can save it. So you delete most of everything. I maybe save 3 a day out of the 300 I get. I probably have about 20, 25 at the end of the week. So it's really not a high proportion.
I don't mean to cast aspersions, but I know some people struggle with the issue of information overload. Look, the world has been full of information overload since the beginning of time. There's more information. If you stand in the middle of a forest, there's more information than you can possibly deal with there. And you can only take it in a really, really high level kind of way. For some of you, just a caution, if you subscribe for 50 different feeds and you begin to approach it like email, which you have to get through it every day, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And we don't want you to do that. Okay, that's not the intent. We don't want to create another deliverable, another responsibility for you. In fact, if you miss 2 or 3 or 4 days, it's fine. Don't worry about it. The thing that happens that's evanescent or that's emergent and lasts for 2 or 3 or 4 days and then goes away and you missed it, first of all, there are far too many people who believe that the sign of being smart is completely aware of all pop culture phenomena, which is ludicrous. Okay. But if you miss 3 or 4 days, just as Wendy says, delete the lot. There you go. Just let it go. It's fine. Now, there might be something that you're particularly interested in. You may want to use your reader to separate. This particular feed goes separate and all the others go into a sort of a giant stream, sort of mixed in by time, for instance. Usually a reader will allow you to say, I want to see all my Wall Street Journals, and then I want to see all my New York Times, or you can switch them by time. If one of them you must read every day, fine. But I know far too many people, I talked to a guy the other day who said, yeah, I'm way behind my RSS feeds. I'm like, I'll tell you what, if you're not behind on a deadline for work and you're not behind on telling your spouse you love him or her and hugging your kids and making sure they're well clothed and fed and you're helping them with their homework, if you're not behind on those things, you're probably okay. And being behind on RSS is almost, Wendy, is it fair to say it's almost an oxymoron?
Oh,
to some degree?
definitely.
Yeah. We're trying to get a scan here, and we're trying to look beyond. Yeah, look, every once in a while you'll miss a great idea. No question about it. But you were missing them before you had RSS feeds too. We're not trying to create another responsibility and deliverable such that you're going to have angst about it, because it's poking with an umbrella, but you're going to develop that angst all by yourself.
Definitely. And if you delete a post, just for those of you that have got a rudimentary, that are just coming to this, if you delete a post, you're just deleting that message, not the feed itself. So it's like, if you throw a catalogue out because it arrives at your house, 5 minutes later, or 3 days later, another catalogue arrives. So don't worry about deleting. You're doing fine. And every now and again, you will need to do a cull of all of the, and decide which ones aren't useful or whatever. But for now, more is better.
Yeah, more is better. It goes back to our point about which feeds to choose. If you go to a website and now you're clued in, now your reticular activating system will see the fact that there's an RSS feed there, and you maybe see something on the website you like, click the RSS feed and read it for a week and then go, okay, that was a mistake, and delete it. It's fine.
That's what I do. I often use RSS as a method of keeping track of websites that hit me as interesting. Rather than bookmarking them and never going back to them, I use their RSS to remind me that they exist. Okay, so we had all of our, say, 300 posts a week, and we got rid of 275, and we got 25 left. And so on 1 day a week is when you read all of the saved posts that you've saved.
Or not deleted.
Or not deleted,
right, yeah. Because
you wanted to read them more carefully, or you thought, oh, that prompted an idea, something like that. I like Sunday mornings in Starbucks. It's any time when you can concentrate. This is when you have to have concentration time. You can use it when you're watching practice, or a night when your spouse goes out, or one of your weekday lunches if you don't want to use family time, if you're in the office.
Yeah, I've actually found that I have 3 times a day where I do email. I also do Reacher, which is our FogBug software that has emails that come into me. I do that 3 times a day. And I've discovered now that I do RSS during that time as well. I'm processing all of my asynchronous communications, if you will, at the same time in a 30-minute bit throughout the day. And I discovered that usually within a couple of days, I have a lull in the amount of communications I get, such that at the end of a 30-minute bit, I have 15 minutes or 10 minutes left where I can get through my reading. Every once in a while, it does go over to Saturday. And try to get them all done by Saturday noon. And I don't sometimes, and I let myself off the hook. Again, the world is happening and you're not responsible to know everything, and the feeling of getting behind will only make things worse. We don't want that. What we want is to take advantage of the technology so that you'll become more knowledgeable, and then every night let yourself off the hook. As Jimmy Buffett would say, breathe in, breathe out, move on.
Indeed.
Okay?
Okay, so I always read them with a pen and paper or a printer nearby, just because if it's something I want to save, or I have an idea, I want to be able to immediately scribble my idea down before it disappears.
I do it differently. I don't too often I don't have a pen and paper, or I'm reading it at a time that's not convenient or whatever. And so I will click and drag and put it in OmniFocus. I know Mike would, and many of our listeners who are more technical would say Evernote is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. If I were reading on my iPad, I just take a picture of the screen of my iPad.
Yeah,
that's great. And I can do that with Kindle books, and I can do it with Wall Street Journal pages and so on. I do know that Feedly Pro, which is a paid version of Feedly that you and I use, allows one-click save to Evernote.
Yeah, and a lot of the feed readers are integrated with other services because they're not really there for saving information. that if you try and search them, it gets really messy really quickly. So if you want to save that information, you need to put it in your long-term storage of information system, whatever that is.
Yeah, the river of information in front of you is flowing constantly, and your reader allows you to put the toe in the water and to feel the water and to feel it go by. The idea that you're going to dam the river with your foot is limited. So you need to have to pull it out of the river and put it somewhere else, in your basket or in your picnic basket or in the basket of your bike that you drove to the river with, whatever form, or stuff it in your back pocket, whatever you like.
Exactly.
Good.
And the other thing that's great about RSS feed readers is that often there's a one click to send a post to somebody else.
Yes.
And so it's a great way of keeping in contact with your network, because when you see something that would be interesting for someone else, it's like a 2-second thing to write in their email address and say, hey, I thought you'd be interested in this.
And I have to tell you, over the years, that one of my regrets about Manager Tools is, Manager Tools, Grid both, is that we have a very distinctive viewpoint that we know works. We're confident about it. We have a lot of experience with it. We have data in many of the cases. And I've developed a reputation for being quite confident about how we communicate our stuff, because we don't give advice. We make recommendations, which means we have skin in the game. It's the old joke about the difference between a bacon and egg breakfast. The chicken made a contribution and the pig made a commitment. Well, we're making a commitment when we say we recommend you do X because we know X works and we'll stand behind it. Well, that comes across to a lot of people who are used to listening to other people talking about managing and careers as, oh, here's a suggestion, or you might want to consider this. And so because of that, there are a lot of people who listen and say, well, I think if I suggest something to Mark, he'll tell me I'm wrong. Well, to be honest, if you're wrong, if I think you're wrong, I'll tell you so. But we'd love to hear from you. If you're using an RSS reader and you see an article that you think you might help, send it to customerservice@manager-tools.com. and put the title, this is for Mark, or this is for Wendy, and let us know. We're always interested in hearing what things you're dealing with. And for that matter, you can ask us questions there too. Although our forums are probably the best place to ask questions if you're not a licensee. But yeah, if you can use your RSS to send us a note and say, boy, I don't know, either these guys agree with you, or Mark, these guys think you're crazy, that's okay. We know we're not towing the standard line. I just got an email from a guy in Australia who says, Mark, I want to put my 2 cents in for why the one-page resume works great in Australia. And Aussies have been pretty direct with me that, oh, your one-page resume thing won't work. And here's an Aussie saying, man, people love my one-page resume. I just got a great job because of it. So it happens. Okay, so you want to wrap us up?
Sure. So 1 is choose your feed reader. 2 is choose your feeds. 3 is make a cursory sweep every day. And then 4 is choose 1 day a week for a deeper read.
Yeah, we love RSS feeds. I mean, constant stream of new ideas, and it keeps us up to date. And we don't have enough time. We just don't. And it's a great way to sample what's going on in the world and decide what might be more valuable for you. Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back next week. After all, it's fall, it's baseball. You never know.